1 year after the first human snipers had arrived at Zenith Station, the galaxy faced its greatest crisis yet. Not from external threats or border conflicts, but from a discovery that shook the very foundations of interstellar civilization. The Seekers, an ancient race dedicated to knowledge and exploration, had found something in the dead system of Omega Centauri. A derelict ship of impossible age, predating all known galactic civilizations. And inside, they found records. Records that suggested the current galactic powers were not the first to achieve interstellar flight. There had been others, many others, all gone now, leaving only scattered ruins and this single ship as testament to their existence. The pattern is clear. Seeker Prime Zesh announced to the emergency gathering of all major powers. Every civilization reaches a certain point of development and then disappears. War, disease, unknown calamity. The causes vary, but the result is always the same. Extinction. The implications were terrifying. If the pattern held, every species in the room was doomed to follow their predecessors into oblivion. There must be a way to break the cycle, Admiral Voss insisted. We have advantages they didn't. We have unity. We have the Empire. They had empires too, Zesh replied, projecting images of dead worlds. Greater than ours. It didn't save them. In the chaos of debate that followed, few noticed the humans conferring quietly in the corner. Chun, Harper, and a new figure, an elderly man with kind eyes and weathered hands who'd arrived that morning without fanfare. Finally, the old man stood. I'm Professor Marcus Delgado, Earth Historical Studies. I think I can offer some perspective. The room turned to him with desperate hope. Humans had solved impossible problems before. Perhaps they could solve this one. The pattern you've discovered isn't surprising, Delgado said. It's inevitable. Every species that achieves dominance faces the same choice. Stagnation or evolution. Most choose stagnation. It's safer, more comfortable, and ultimately fatal. So we're doomed. Core demanded. No, because you've done something none of the others did. You invited humans. The statement hung in the air, absurd and profound in equal measure. Delgado continued. You see us as warriors, as killers, as problems to be solved or tools to be used. You're missing the real truth. Humans aren't special because we're good at war. We're special because we're terrible at peace. He gestured to the images of dead civilizations. Every one of these species achieved harmony, unity, perfection, and in doing so, they stopped adapting. When new challenges arose, they couldn't change fast enough, couldn't think differently enough, couldn't become what they needed to survive. Humans never achieved harmony. We can't. It's not in our nature. We're always competing, always changing, always finding new ways to be difficult. You fear our violence, but violence is just a symptom. Our true nature is chaos. Controlled, directed, purposeful chaos. ZYX Theta found himself speaking. You're saying humanity's weakness is actually its strength? I'm saying humanity doesn't have strengths or weaknesses. We have variety. On Earth right now, humans are living in ways that haven't changed for thousands of years. Others are pushing the boundaries of science and philosophy. Some seek war. Others dedicate their lives to peace. We're not a species. We're an argument with itself. That sounds like madness, YSSL observed. It is, Harper interjected, functional madness. Other species evolve toward optimal solutions. Humans evolve in every direction at once. Most mutations fail, but some succeed spectacularly. And we keep all of them just in case. Chun stood, adding her perspective. When you asked for our snipers, you thought you were getting weapons. You got evolution, not just in warfare, but in thinking. Every student who learns our methods changes them, improves them, makes them something new. The dead civilizations achieved perfection, Delgado concluded. And perfection cannot adapt. By bringing humans into your empire, you've infected yourselves with our chaos. Our inability to stop changing. It's uncomfortable. It's dangerous. And it might just save you all. The debate that followed was fierce. Some demanded the humans be expelled before their chaos destroyed everything. Others argued for deeper integration. The Seekers retreated to study this new hypothesis. But in the months that followed, evidence mounted. Species that had embraced human methods weren't just becoming better warriors. They were becoming different, more varied, less predictable. The Krellians developed three distinct military philosophies where before they'd had one. The Yavani began producing art that shocked and divided their previously harmonious culture. The Etherians discovered internal conflicts they'd suppressed for millennia. It was messy. It was uncomfortable. It was alive in a way the galaxy hadn't been for eons. "We're saving them by destroying who they were," Chin observed to Morrison and Santos, who'd returned to visit the station. "No," Morrison corrected. "We're saving them by showing them who they could be." Every species has the capacity for chaos. They just needed permission to embrace it. The changes accelerated. Mixed species teams became common, each bringing different perspectives. Traditional hierarchies buckled under the weight of new ideas. The rigid structure of the empire began to flex and adapt. Not everyone embraced the change. The hegemony, recovering from their earlier defeat, saw opportunity in the chaos. They launched a new offensive, expecting to find the empire weakened by internal division. They found something else entirely. The response wasn't unified. It couldn't be. Instead, dozens of different strategies emerged from different sectors. Some used traditional fleet tactics. Others employed human-style shadow warfare. Still others invented entirely new approaches, mixing philosophies in ways that shouldn't have worked but did. The hegemony forces, trained to fight predictable enemies, shattered against the chaotic response. They couldn't adapt fast enough to enemies that fought differently in every engagement. "This is insanity," their supreme commander broadcast in frustration. "You have no unified doctrine, no consistent strategy. How can you function?" "We don't function," Admiral Voss replied. "We evolve." The war ended not with surrender, but with absorption. Hegemony forces began defecting, drawn to the dangerous freedom the empire now represented. Within a year, the hegemony had dissolved, its members choosing chaos over order. But the real test came from an unexpected direction. Deep space monitors detected an approaching force unlike anything in recorded history. Ships of impossible design, using technology that defied understanding. The Ravagers, as they came to be known, destroyed everything in their path without communication or mercy. Analysis suggested they were old, older than the dead civilizations, perhaps the very force that had destroyed them. "They're perfect," the Seekers reported with terrified awe. "Perfect weapons, perfect efficiency, no Bodiastion, no weakness we can detect." The galaxy prepared for its final war. Fleets gathered, weapons charged, and in quiet rooms, humans smiled. "Perfect," Harper mused. "How boring." The first engagement was a massacre. The Ravagers' technology was superior in every way. Their tactics flawless. Their coordination absolute. 3 Imperial fleets died in minutes. But as they advanced, something strange happened. Each new engagement was different. Not better necessarily, but different. The galaxy's forces weren't trying to match perfection. They were trying everything else. Chun led sniper teams in operations that shouldn't have been possible, boarding enemy ships to take impossible shots at critical components, using projectile weapons against technology designed to stop energy. Harper's intelligence networks spread chaos in ways the Ravagers couldn't compute. False information that made no logical sense, but somehow disrupted their perfect planning. And in the midst of it all, Professor Delgado sat with alien philosophers and asked dangerous questions. What if perfection was the flaw? What if the Ravagers' inability to change was the key to their defeat? The war raged for months. The galaxy lost more battles than it won. But each loss taught something new. Each defeat sparked innovation. The chaos that humans had introduced became the crucible of transformation. It was Vexlor who found the answer. The Krellian had studied human methods until he understood their essence. Not the techniques, the philosophy, the willingness to do the unthinkable. They're machines, he announced to the War Council. Not artificial, biological, but machines nonetheless. They've achieved perfection by eliminating choice. Variation. Free will itself. So, Court demanded, how does that help us? We introduce choice, Chun said, understanding immediately. We give them options they can't process. Decisions they're not equipped to make. The plan was insane. Instead of fighting the Ravagers, they would confuse them. Surrender followed by attack. Alliance offers mid-battle. Weapons that worked differently each time they were fired. Tactics that made no sense because they weren't meant to. We're going to defeat perfection with imperfection, Harper summarized. Fight order with chaos. Beat programming with free will. It worked. Not quickly, not cleanly, but it worked. The Ravagers' perfect system couldn't handle pure randomness. Their flawless coordination shattered when faced with enemies that didn't behave rationally. Their superior technology failed against weapons that shouldn't exist, but did. In the end, they didn't surrender or retreat. They simply stopped. Their perfect society couldn't process a universe that refused to follow rules. Given the choice between adaptation and shutdown, they chose shutdown. The galaxy had survived. Changed. Scarred. But alive. We won because we're broken. ZY stayed amused at the victory gathering. Because humans showed us that broken things can still function. Can even thrive. You won because you learned the most important human lesson, Delgado corrected. There is no perfect, no final form, no ultimate solution. There's only the next challenge and the will to face it differently than the last. The integration of humans accelerated. Not just as warriors now, but as philosophers, artists, scientists, bringers of chaos in every field. The galaxy would never achieve the harmony of the dead civilizations. It would never know true peace. It would know something better. Life, growth, evolution, the messy, dangerous, beautiful chaos of existence. Years later, when new species were discovered, they were offered the same choice. Join the chaos or face it. Most joined. Some fought and lost. A few fought and won, earning their place through conflict. And always at the center of it all were the humans. Not leading, not controlling, just existing in their contradictory way. Warriors who wrote poetry. Killers who saved lives. Teachers who learned from their students. Morrison and Santos, now trainers of trainers, sat in the same observation deck where it had all started. Watching new students learn old lessons and make them new. Think we made the galaxy better? Santos asked. Define better, Morrison replied. We made it more human, more chaotic, more alive. Whether that's 6 months into the human integration program, the galaxy faced a new threat. The hegemony, a rival power that had watched the Empire's expansion with growing concern, launched a series of provocative actions along the border. Not quite war, but close enough to test responses. Admiral Voss convened an emergency strategy meeting on Zenith Station. The conference room filled with the Empire's best military minds, including the controversial human contingent. Colonel Chun sat quietly in the corner, observing the heated debate. They're probing our defenses, General Korik of the Thornax stated, his massive fists clenched. We should respond with force. Show them the Empire's strength. That's what they want, argued Commander YSSL of the Malosi. A direct confrontation would justify their aggression to the galactic community. What do the humans think? Voss asked, turning to Chun. The room fell silent. In 6 months, human tactical advice had become highly valued, if sometimes unsettling. Chun stood slowly. The hegemony is playing a different game. They're not testing military strength. They're testing resolve. They want to see if the Empire will bleed itself in small conflicts. Then what do you suggest? Voss pressed. Let me make a call, Chun said. I think it's time you met someone special. 3 days later, an unmarked transport docked at Zenith. A single figure emerged, moving through the station like a shadow. Where other humans had presence, this one seemed to exist in the spaces between observation. Even Chun showed deference as he entered the briefing room. Gentlemen, Chun announced. Major David Harper, Earth Strategic Intelligence. Harper was unremarkable. average height, average build, features that seemed to shift between forgettable and completely absent. It was only when he spoke that the room's atmosphere changed. The hegemony has 47 deep cover operatives currently active in Empire space, Harper said without preamble. They've been mapping your defenses, identifying weaknesses, preparing for what they believe will be a limited conflict to test your resolve. Impossible, Galactic. Our security is compromised, Harper finished. Agent designation Whisper 7 is currently serving as aide to Senator Rex. Shall I continue, or would you prefer to verify that first? The security check took 10 minutes. When it confirmed Harper's claim, the room's skepticism transformed into acute attention. How do you know this? Voss demanded. Harper smiled, an expression that made Chen's cold efficiency seem warm by comparison. Humans didn't survive by being the strongest. We survived by knowing things others didn't, by being where others couldn't, by doing what others wouldn't. You're not a sniper, ZYX Theta observed. No, Harper agreed. Snipers eliminate bodies. I eliminate possibilities. Would you like to know how to win this war without firing a shot? Over the next hour, Harper outlined a campaign that made the assembled officers question everything they knew about warfare. No fleets, no bombardments, no grand battles, just precision, psychology, and the ruthless exploitation of enemy assumptions. The hegemony expects you to react like an empire, Harper explained, with pride, force, visible response. Instead, we're going to make them doubt everything they think they know. The first phase began immediately. Using intelligence Harper's people had gathered, small teams of human-trained snipers were inserted into hegemony border worlds. Their mission wasn't to kill, but to observe, to map, to wait. Lieutenant Vexlor, now one of Chen's top students, found himself on a hegemony industrial world with 2 human advisors. They spent 3 weeks documenting everything. Guard rotations, communication protocols, which officials took bribes, which soldiers frequented which establishments. Why are we taking shots? Vexlor asked one night, watching a hegemony general through a scope. I have clear lines on dozens of targets. Because dead enemies can be replaced, Sergeant Mills explained. Compromised enemies are much more useful. Phase 2 was psychological. The documented intelligence was used not for attacks, but for manipulation. Hegemony officials began receiving anonymous messages containing details about their secret activities. Not threats, just proof that someone knew. Someone was watching. Paranoia spread like wildfire. Officials suspected each other of spying. Security forces saw shadows everywhere. The hegemony's efficient military machine began to stutter as trust evaporated. They're pulling forces back from the border, Voss reported at the next briefing. Redeploying to internal security. Of course they are, Harper said. They think they have a massive intelligence leak. They're looking for spies that don't exist. Well, not in the way they think. Phase 3 was where Harper's true genius showed. Using the chaos they'd created, human intelligence operatives began feeding false information through channels the hegemony thought were secure. Reports of Imperial superweapons, deployment schedules that didn't exist, strategic plans that were pure fiction. The hegemony military began chasing ghosts. They reinforced positions against attacks that never came. They developed countermeasures for weapons that didn't exist. They spent resources preparing for a war the Empire had no intention of fighting. But it was Phase 4 that broke them. Every organization has pressure points, Harper explained to the fascinated officers. Individuals whose removal would cause disproportionate disruption. The hegemony has 17 such points. We're going to remove 6. Assassination? Korik asked, approval clear in his voice. No, Harper smiled. Much worse. Disgrace. Over the next month, 6 key hegemony officials found their darkest secrets exposed. Financial corruption, personal scandals, hidden allegiances, all revealed with surgical precision through channels that couldn't be traced back to the Empire. The information was real, gathered through methods that made even Shun uncomfortable. Harper's people didn't just observe. They manipulated. They created situations. They turned strengths into weaknesses and loyalties into liabilities. You're destroying them without firing a shot, YSSL observed, her feathers rustling with nervous energy. The strongest fortress is the mind, Harper replied. Break that, and everything else crumbles. The results were spectacular. The hegemony government faced internal crisis after crisis. Their military, paranoid, and chasing false intelligence made strategic blunders. Their economy, strained by unnecessary military expenditures, began to falter. Within 3 months, they sued for peace. Not because they'd lost a war, but because they couldn't afford to fight one. The Imperial Senate was ecstatic. A major threat neutralized without a single fleet engagement. No casualties, no destroyed worlds. Just the precise application of human intelligence methods. But, in private, many officers were deeply disturbed. They'd wanted human snipers for their marksmanship. They'd gotten something far more dangerous. Humans who could destroy entire civilizations with information and psychology. You've turned war into something else, Zuyx Theta told Harper during a private meeting. Something that doesn't require warriors at all. War has always been about achieving political objectives, Harper replied. Humans just learned that killing is often the least efficient way to do that. Why destroy an enemy when you can make them destroy themselves? And if these methods were turned against the Empire? Harper's smile was genuinely warm this time. Commander, why would we compromise our best customer? Earth needs allies. The Empire needs victories. It's a profitable arrangement for everyone. Until it isn't. True, but that's why we're teaching you our methods. Shin shows you how we hunt bodies. I'm showing you how we hunt minds. Knowledge is the best defense against knowledge. The integration program expanded again. Now alongside sniper schools, intelligence academies opened. Aliens learn human spycraft, psychological operations, information warfare. They learn to think in shadows and speak in silence. Some excelled at these new arts. The Yavani, with their natural empathy, became excellent at reading behavioral patterns. The Etherians, with their ability to phase partially out of visible reality, made natural infiltrators once they learned human stealth philosophy. But it was what happened next that truly demonstrated how much the galaxy had changed. The Confederacy of Zephin, a minor power that had long been a thorn in the Empire's side, began experiencing similar disruptions to what had plagued the hegemony. Officials compromised, secrets exposed, military forces chasing phantoms. But this time it wasn't Harper's doing. Someone's using our methods, he reported to Admiral Voss, genuine concern in his voice. Someone who learned well. Investigation revealed the truth. A coalition of Imperial intelligence services, trained in human methods, had launched their own shadow war. They'd learned too well, adapting human techniques to their own species' strengths. We created monsters, Chen observed, watching the reports of Confederacy's internal collapse. No, Harper corrected. We revealed the monsters that were always there. Every species that survived to achieve spaceflight did so through cunning as much as strength. We just showed them how to weaponize it. The response from Earth was swift. New advisors arrived, not to stop the Empire's shadow wars, but to refine them, to teach ethics alongside efficacy, to show the difference between necessary action and wanton destruction. Power without principle is chaos, the new instructors taught. Human warfare works because it has rules, lines we don't cross, not from weakness, but from wisdom. Today's enemy might be tomorrow's ally. Today's victory might be tomorrow's regret. It was a difficult lesson for species accustomed to total war or complete peace. The human way existed in the gray spaces between, where victory and morality had to be carefully balanced. Some students couldn't adapt. The Thornax found the subtlety frustrating. Several Krellian warriors resigned rather than embrace what they saw as dishonorable tactics. But others thrived, finding in human methods a way to protect their people without destroying their souls. The galaxy was changing. Wars became rarer, but stranger. Conflicts were won in boardrooms and data centers as often as battlefields. The threat of human-trained operatives made aggression a dangerous gamble. We've created a new balance, Voss told the Imperial Senate. One based on knowledge rather than firepower. But Harper, watching from the shadows as always, knew better. Balance was temporary. Evolution was constant. The galaxy had learned human methods, but humans had been evolving those methods for millennia. What they taught was yesterday's warfare. Tomorrow's was already being developed in quiet facilities on Earth. So what comes next? Chun asked him one evening as they watched the stars from Zenith's observation deck. The same thing that always comes next, Harper replied. Someone will think they've found a counter to our methods. They'll test it, and we'll adapt. It's the oldest dance in human history. And if someone adapts faster than us, Harper smiled, then we'll learn from them. That's the real human superpower, Colonel. Not our weapons or our tactics. Our ability to take the best from everyone we meet and make it better. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. We're just the most adaptable. In the sniper school, Vexlor was teaching newer students. He'd integrated human patience with Krellian precision, creating something new, something that transcended both origins. Remember, he told his class, the weapon is just a tool. The mind is what matters. Think like a human. Strike like lightning. Disappear like smoke. Become death itself, but never forget why you kill. The students, a mix of dozen species, absorbed the lessons. Each would interpret them differently. Each would add their own innovations. The art of war was evolving, and humans had been the catalyst. But catalysts, Harper knew, started reactions they couldn't always control. The galaxy had wanted human warfare. Now it had to live with the consequences. And somewhere in the dark between stars, new threats were learning too. Watching, adapting, preparing. The game was far from over. It had just become infinitely more complex. 3 months had passed since Morrison and Santos returned to Earth. The galaxy had changed in those months. Word of the Kepler 442b operation spread through military channels like wildfire. Some species called for restrictions on human military integration. Others demanded their own human sniper teams. The debate raged in the Imperial Senate while Earth's diplomats negotiated carefully. On Zenith Station, Commander Zoex Theta found himself at the center of the controversy. As the officer who had overseen the human deployment, everyone wanted his opinion. He gave it reluctantly, always with the same warning. Be careful what you wish for. Today was different. Today, the humans were returning. Not Morrison and Santos this time, but a full training cadre. 12 human snipers assigned to teach Imperial forces their methods. The program had been approved despite fierce opposition, a testament to how badly the Empire wanted to understand human warfare. They're early, Lieutenant Kress announced, watching the approaching transport on his screen. The Malosi officer's feathers ruffled nervously. 3 hours ahead of schedule. Humans value punctuality differently, the Wyx Theta noted. They arrive early to observe, to plan, to understand terrain before others realize the game has begun. The docking bay was crowded with observers. Officers from dozens of species had manufactured reasons to be present. Everyone wanted to see these new humans, to judge if they were like the first two. The transport's doors opened with a soft hiss. 12 figures emerged in perfect formation, moving with that same predatory grace Morrison and Santos had displayed. Their leader, a woman with short silver hair and pale blue eyes, stepped forward. Colonel Sarah Chun, Earth Defense Corps, she announced. We're here to establish the Joint Sniper Training Program. ZYX Theta studied her carefully. Where Morrison had been weathered granite, Chun was polished steel. Colder, more refined, infinitely more dangerous. Welcome to Zenith Station, Colonel. I am Commander Zixteta. I'll be your liaison. Chin's eyes swept the gathered crowd, cataloging faces, positions, potential threats. Commander, I've read your reports on the Kepler operation. Thorough, accurate. You understand us better than most. I try to understand all warriors. YX Theta replied carefully. We're not warriors, Chin corrected. Warriors fight. We hunt. There's a significant difference. The human team moved through the station like a single organism. They've been assigned a training facility in the military sector, a space hastily converted from storage. Within hours, they had transformed it. Shooting positions, observation posts, equipment that looked primitive compared to Imperial technology, but radiated lethal purpose. The first training session was scheduled for the next day. 50 of the Empire's best marksmen from various species had volunteered. They arrived to find the humans had completely reconstructed the facility overnight. "Welcome to Sniper School," Chen announced to the assembled troops. "Forget everything you think you know about long-range combat. You're here to learn how humans hunt. First lesson: the kill is the smallest part of what we do." A Thornax warrior raised his hand. "Then, what is the largest part?" "Patience," Chen replied. "Humans will wait days for the perfect shot. We'll lie in our own filth, ignore pain, become part of the landscape. Because the difference between a good shot and a perfect shot is often the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure." The training was unlike anything the Imperial forces had experienced. Where their military academies focused on technology and firepower, the humans emphasized psychology and biology. They taught students to read wind patterns and grass movement, to calculate bullet drop using primitive mathematics, to control their heartbeat through meditation techniques older than human spaceflight. "Why not just use targeting computers?" a Krellian student asked after struggling with manual calculations. Master Sergeant Torres, one of Chen's instructors, smiled coldly. "Computers fail. Electronics get jammed. EMP weapons exist. But physics? Math? Those are eternal. A human sniper can make kill shots with technology your ancestors would recognize. That's not weakness. That's strength." The students struggled. Species that had relied on energy weapons for millennia found the concept of ballistic trajectories baffling. Others couldn't grasp the patience required. The Gorvaks wanted to charge. The Malosi wanted to use aerial advantage. The Yavani found the whole concept of hiding dishonorable. But some adapted. A Villani pilot named HSSS proved naturally gifted at reading atmospheric conditions. A young Krellian warrior called Vexlor showed an aptitude for impossible shots. Slowly, painfully, Chen's team began producing results. It was during the third week that everything went wrong. The station's proximity alarms screamed to life during a night training session. Unknown vessels had dropped out of hyperspace dangerously close to Zenith. The tactical displays showed 6 ships of unfamiliar configuration, bristling with weapons. "Raiders," Admiral Voss announced over the station-wide comm. "All personnel to battle stations." This is not a drill. The Raiders were a mixed group, pirates and mercenaries drawn by rumors of new weapons technology on the station. They'd chosen their timing carefully. Most of the station's defense fleet was deployed elsewhere. Zenith was vulnerable. "They're jamming our communications," an officer reported. "We can't call for reinforcement. Shield generators are being targeted," another called out. "They know exactly where to hit us." Commander Zoyax Theta found himself in the command center as chaos erupted. The Raiders were professional, systematic. They disabled defensive systems with surgical precision while assault shuttles launched toward the station's hull. "They have inside information," Voss concluded. "Someone told them exactly when we'd be vulnerable." The first breach came in the civilian sector. Raiders in powered armor poured through, overwhelming the light security forces. The second breach hit the research labs. The third targeted the military sector directly toward the sniper school. "Evacuate the training facility," Zoyax Theta ordered. "Get those students to the safe zones." "Negative." Chen's voice cut through the comm chatter. "We're addressing the situation." "Colonel, you're equipped for training, not combat." "Fall back to—" "Commander," Chen interrupted. "You're about to receive an education." In the sniper school, Chen's team moved with practiced efficiency. Training weapons were replaced with live ammunition. The students watched in amazement as the humans transformed from instructors to instruments of death in seconds. "Real-world lesson," Torres announced, checking his rifle. "Sometimes the enemy comes to you. When that happens, you remind them why humans are apex predators." "But they have powered armor," a student protested. "Energy shields. Your primitive weapons were designed to kill humans Chen finished. And humans are much harder to kill than most species realize. Take positions. Watch. Learn. The raiders advancing on the military sector were confident. Their intel said this area housed a training facility full of students and instructors. Easy prey. Rich hostages. They moved through the corridors in standard assault formation, shields up, weapons ready. The first raider died without seeing his killer. The shot came from an impossible angle, threading through a ventilation grate to strike the weak point where helmet met chest plate. The armor that could stop plasma bolts crumpled under the impact of a tungsten penetrator round. Contact, the raid leader shouted. Défensive formation. The second raider fell before the words finished echoing. The shot punched through a wall, the shooter somehow knowing exactly where the target would be. They're using projectile weapons, someone reported. Adjust shields for kinetic impact. It was the last mistake they made. The adjustment that strengthened shields against projectiles weakened them against the improvised plasma charges Chen's team had prepared. The corridor erupted in control violence. But this was just the opening move. While the raiders focused on the known threat, human snipers had dispersed throughout the station using maintenance passages and emergency routes. They'd studied Zenith's layout for weeks, mapping every sight line, every choke point, every killing field. In the civilian sector, raiders herding hostages suddenly found their numbers thinning. Silent shots from hidden positions dropped targets with mechanical precision. No muzzle flash to track. No energy signature to detect. Just death arriving at 1,200 meters per second. Where are they? A raider lieutenant screamed, watching another squad mate fall. I can't see them. Lesson 1. Chun murmured from her position 300 meters away. The enemy can't kill what they can't find. The raider commander, watching his operation fall apart on his tactical display, made a desperate decision. All units converge on the command center. Take the leadership hostage. We can still salvage this. It was exactly what Chun had anticipated. She'd studied raider psychology, knew how they thought when cornered. The convergence created a perfect kill box. All teams, she whispered in her comm, they're clustering. Time to introduce them to coordinated fire. What followed was 15 minutes of precise, brutal efficiency. The humans had turned Zenith Station into a shooting gallery. Raiders found themselves caught in crossfires from positions they couldn't identify. Every corner became a potential death trap. Every corridor a killing field. The students watched from their positions, providing support where directed, but mostly observing the masters at work. Vexlor saw Torres make a shot through 3 separate panes of transparent aluminum to eliminate a raider officer. HSSS watched Chun calculate wind currents from the station's life support system to curve a shot around a corner. Impossible, he whispered. No, Chun replied, already moving to her next position. Just human. The raider commander made one last desperate attempt. He gathered his remaining forces, 30 heavily armed mercenaries, for a direct assault on the command center. They would take hostages or die trying. They died trying. The humans had prepared for this too. As the raiders entered the main corridor leading to command, they found themselves in a carefully constructed kill zone. Multiple angles of fire. No cover that hadn't been compromised. No escape routes that weren't already watched. Morrison and Santos had eliminated 40 targets in 21 days. Chin's team dropped 30 in 40 seconds. When the station security forces finally arrived, they found corridors littered with precisely placed bodies. Each raider had been eliminated with minimal shots, maximum efficiency. The humans were already cleaning their weapons, discussing the action like professors reviewing a lecture. 97 confirmed kills, Torres reported to Chun. No friendly casualties. Minimal structural damage. Acceptable, Chun replied, though Johnson needs to work on his breathing. That 4th shot pulled left. Admiral Voss arrived at the training facility to find the humans calmly resuming their teaching positions. The students sat in shocked silence, processing what they'd witnessed. How? Voss asked simply. Chun looked up from her rifle. How what, Admiral? 97 raiders. Powered armor. Energy shields. Military-grade weapons. You had 12 instructors with training equipment. We had 12 human snipers, Chun corrected. The raiders had 97 targets. The math was never in their favor. But the coordination, the speed, the precision. Admiral, humans have been perfecting the art of killing each other for our entire existence. We've turned death into a science. These raiders thought they were predators. They learned too late that they were prey. In the aftermath, as security teams processed the scene, the true scope of what had happened became clear. The humans hadn't just defended the station. They'd orchestrated a complete tactical domination. Every raider movement had been anticipated, every contingency planned for, every death deliberate and purposeful. The security chief, reviewing the footage, made a disturbing discovery. They could have ended it faster, he reported to Voss. Several times they had shots on the raider commander, but didn't take them. What? Chen answered without emotion. He was more useful alive. His panic drove his forces into our kill zones. His desperation made them predictable. Sometimes the best shot is the one you don't take. The students who had witnessed the battle were changed. Some requested transfers, unable to reconcile what they'd seen with their concepts of warfare. Others threw themselves into training with renewed determination, understanding now what Chun had meant about hunting versus fighting. Vexlor approached Chun after the debriefing. I want to learn, truly learn, not just marksmanship. Everything. Chun studied the young Krellian. Everything includes things your culture finds abhorrent. Patience that borders on obsession. Calculation that eliminates mercy. The willingness to kill without hatred or passion because emotion clouds judgment. I understand. No, Chin said. You don't, but you might give in time. Word of the station incident spread even faster than the Kepler operation had. 97 raiders eliminated by 12 humans. No energy weapons, no advanced technology, just skill, patience, and the ruthless application of violence. The Imperial Senate convened emergency sessions. Some called for immediate expansion of human integration. Others demanded restrictions, fearing what would happen if humans ever turned those skills against the Empire. On Zenith Station, life slowly returned to normal. The training continued. Students from across the Empire learned human methods. Some excelled. Many failed. All were changed by the experience. Commander Zoyax Theta found himself observing a night training session. Chun was teaching advanced concealment techniques, showing students how to remain motionless for hours. As he watched, she materialized beside him, having moved from her position without him noticing. Something troubling you, Commander? ZYX Theta considered his words carefully. That wasn't defense. What you did to those raiders. It was execution. Yes, Chin agreed simply. They came to kill and pillage. We removed them from existence with maximum efficiency. Would you prefer we had given them a sporting chance? My people value honor in combat. So do humans, Chen said. We just define it differently. There's honor in protecting the innocent. Honor in ending threats quickly. Honor in being so good at killing that you rarely need to do it. And if the Empire decides humans are too dangerous? Chun smiled, a cold expression that never reached her eyes. Then, the Empire will learn why humans survived on a planet where everything tried to kill us. Why we became the dominant species despite being physically weaker than our competitors. We didn't conquer Earth through strength or speed or natural weapons. We conquered it through intelligence, adaptability, and the absolute willingness to do whatever was necessary. She turned back to her students. But that won't happen, because the Empire is smart enough to want us pointing outward, not inward. Aren't you, Commander? ZYX Theta watched her return to teaching, moving like smoke through the darkness. The humans had shown their value. They'd also shown their danger. The galaxy had invited death to dinner and was now realizing it might never leave. 3 days later, another transport arrived. 24 more human snipers. Then another. Then another. The integration was accelerating despite the fears. Or perhaps because of them. Better to have the predators on your side than in the shadows. The sniper school grew. Students arrived from every corner of the Empire. They learned to shoot, but, more importantly, they learned to think like humans. To see warfare not as a clash of forces, but as a problem to be solved with minimal energy and maximum effect. Some nights, ZYX Theta stood in the observation deck where he'd first talked with Morrison. He wondered if the Empire understood what it had unleashed. Humans weren't just teaching marksmanship. They were teaching a philosophy, a way of war that turned individual soldiers into instruments of strategic change. The galaxy had wanted to see what humans could do. Now it was learning. The question was whether it could survive the lesson. In the depths of the training facility, Chun cleaned her rifle and smiled. Phase 1 was complete. The Empire had accepted human methods. Phase 2 would be more interesting, because teaching aliens to shoot was simple. Teaching them to think like humans? That would change everything. And change, Chinu, was just another word for opportunity. The kind of opportunity that humans had always been very, very good at exploiting. The shuttle broke through Kepler 442b's atmosphere like a ghost, its stealth systems humming quietly. Below them, an endless sea of green stretched to the horizon, broken only by mountain peaks that pierced the jungle canopy like ancient teeth. Morrison studied the landscape through the viewport, his mind already calculating angles, distances, and escape routes. Drop zone approaching in 30 seconds, the pilot announced. She was Vellani, a serpentine species known for their flying skills. Her scales shifted nervously as she navigated the dense air currents. Are you certain about these coordinates? There's nothing but jungle for 50 kilometers in any direction. That's the point, Santos replied, checking her gear one final time. Dead ground between 3 hive clusters. They won't expect anyone to insert there because it's too far from any targets. Too far for normal operations, the security chief, a bulky Gorvok named Thas, grumbled. How exactly do you plan to cover that distance undetected? Morrison smiled. We walk. The shuttle touched down in a small clearing, barely large enough for the craft. The humans were out before the landing struts had fully deployed, their movements smooth and practiced. They immediately began pulling camouflage containers from the cargo hold. What is all this? The medic, a delicate Etherian named Wisp, asked through the comlink. These weren't on the equipment manifest. Insurance, Morrison said, burying one of the containers at the base of a distinctive tree. Cache sites, water, ammunition, medical supplies, emergency rations. We'll place 20 of these across our operational area. 20, Thas exclaimed. That will take days. 3 days, Santos corrected, already marking the location on her tactical display. Then we begin hunting. The extraction team exchanged glances. This wasn't how Galactic military operations worked. You didn't spend days preparing. You struck hard and fast with overwhelming force. But the humans seemed to have different ideas. Over the next 72 hours, Morrison and Santos moved through the jungle like they were born to it. They traveled only at night, using thermal dampening suits that made them invisible to Darkari patrols. During the day, they dug hide sites, studied patrol patterns, and placed their supply caches. The extraction team monitored from orbit, growing increasingly frustrated. They've been planetside for 3 days and haven't fired a single shot, Thas complained to Admiral Voss during a status update. They're just walking around. Patience, Voss replied, though her tone suggested she shared his concerns. Human warfare doctrine is unusual. Give them time. On the 4th night, everything changed. Morrison and Santos had positioned themselves on a ridge overlooking a major Darkari transit route. They'd been in position for 6 hours, completely motionless, when Santos whispered, "Movement! 2 kilometers. Looks like a command group." Through his scope, Morrison could see them. 8 Darkari warriors surrounding a larger figure with distinctive ceremonial armor. The intelligence files had identified this one as Hive Commander ZekTH, responsible for coordinating attacks on Imperial supply lines. Wind, Morrison asked. 3 knots from the west, gusting to 5. Temperature differential will push the round down 0.3 mils at this range. Morrison made tiny adjustments to his scope. The Darkari moved through the jungle confidently, unaware they were being watched. At 2 kilometers, they were beyond the effective range of any energy weapon. Even other projectile weapons would struggle with accuracy at this distance. But Morrison's rifle was special. Custom-built on Earth, it fired specialized rounds designed for extreme range engagement. "Send it," Santos whispered. Morrison's breathing slowed. Between heartbeats, in the moment of absolute stillness, he squeezed the trigger. The suppressed rifle made barely a whisper. 2 seconds later, Commander Zekth's head exploded. The ceremonial armor, designed to stop plasma bolts, offered no protection against the tungsten core round traveling at 3 times the speed of sound. The Darkari guards scattered, searching frantically for the threat. They found nothing. Morrison and Santos were already moving, following a pre-planned route to their next position. "Confirmed kill," Santos reported to the orbiting shuttle. "Target Alpha 7 eliminated." In the command center on Zenith Station, officers watched the tactical feed in stunned silence. The shot had been impossible. The distance, the darkness, the jungle canopy, all should have prevented a successful engagement. Yet the humans had made it look easy. Over the next 6 days, the pattern repeated with terrifying efficiency. Morrison and Santos would appear like ghosts, eliminate a target from impossible distances, then vanish into the jungle. They never struck from the same location twice. They never used predictable timing. Sometimes they would take 2 targets in a single night. Other times they would wait days between shots, letting paranoia build in the Darkari ranks. The psychological effect was devastating. Darkari commanders began refusing to leave their underground bunkers. Patrols became erratic, soldiers jumping at every sound. The insurgency's coordination crumbled as leaders feared showing themselves above ground. But it was the 10th day that truly shocked the observers. Santos had identified a rare opportunity. 3 Hive commanders meeting in what they believed was a secure location, a natural cave deep in Darkari territory. The challenge was the approach. The cave was surrounded by hundreds of warriors and sensor grids that would detect any conventional infiltration. "We need a distraction," Morrison decided. "Something to draw their attention." They spent hours preparing, mixing chemicals from their supplies into improvised devices. As night fell, they put their plan into action. The first explosion echoed through the jungle 2 kilometers from the cave. Darkari warriors rushed toward the sound, expecting an attack. 30 seconds later, another explosion, this time from the opposite direction. Then another, and another. They're using some kind of primitive explosives, Thos reported from orbit, creating chaos. But that wasn't the real purpose. While the Darkari responded to the false attacks, Morrison and Santos used the confusion to infiltrate close to the cave. They didn't need to enter. They just needed line of sight to the entrance. They waited. Patience was the sniper's greatest weapon, Morrison had told the observers. The ability to remain motionless for hours, to ignore discomfort, to become part of the environment. 6 hours later, their patience was rewarded. The 3 commanders, believing the threat had passed, emerged from the cave to assess the situation. They stood together for less than 10 seconds. It was enough. Morrison's first shot took the central commander through the throat. Before the body hit the ground, Santos fired, her round catching the second commander in the chest. Morrison's second shot, fired so quickly after the first that it seemed impossible, eliminated the third. 3 commanders. For seconds. Total silence. The Darkari guards at the cave entrance didn't even realize what had happened until the bodies were already falling. By then, the humans were gone, melting back into the jungle like mist. "Impossible," Admiral Voss breathed, watching the replay for the 5th time. The speed, the precision. No species in the Empire can shoot like that. "Now you understand," Commander Galactic said quietly. "They warned us we wouldn't like what we saw." The killing continued with mechanical precision. Morrison and Santos had developed a rhythm, a deadly dance of death that left Darkari commanders falling like leaves. They used every trick in humanity's long history of warfare. Shots through windows at targets who thought they were safe indoors. Rounds that punched through walls to reach hiding commanders. Patience that outlasted any security measure. On the 15th day, something changed. The Darkari tried to adapt, bringing in their own long-range specialists. Insectoid snipers took positions throughout the jungle, hoping to catch the humans. Morrison found the first one by the reflection of its scope in the moonlight. A single shot ended that threat. Santos eliminated two more who had set an ambush along a route they thought the humans would use. Their learning, Morrison noted that night as they cleaned their weapons in a hidden shelter. Getting smarter. Not smart enough, Santos replied. They're thinking like soldiers. We're thinking like predators. The next day proved her right. The Darkari had set up an elaborate trap, using a decoy commander to lure the humans into a kill zone. Dozens of warriors waited in hidden positions, ready to unleash devastating firepower. Morrison and Santos never took the bait. Instead, they circled wide, locating the real commander who was observing from what he thought was a safe distance. The shot came from an angle the Darkari hadn't considered possible, threading between trees to strike with lethal precision. By the 20th day, the count was staggering. 31 confirmed kills. Each one a high-value target. Each one thought to be untouchable. The Darkari insurgency was in chaos. Hive clusters operating without coordination. Warriors deserting rather than face invisible death. But it was what happened on the 21st day that truly broke them. The remaining 9 commanders had gathered in the most secure location they could find. A bunker complex deep underground, accessible only through a single heavily guarded tunnel. They believed they were beyond the reach of the human snipers. Morrison and Santos studied the situation for hours. Direct assault was impossible. The tunnel was a death trap. But humans had long ago learned that when you can't go through a problem, you go around it. They spent the night preparing. Not weapons this time, but chemistry. Santos had identified a weakness in the Darkari plan. The bunker's ventilation system drew air from hidden intakes scattered across the hillside. The intakes were too small for any species to enter, but they were perfect for introducing chemical agents. "Is this honorable?" the shuttle pilot asked over the comm, understanding what they planned. "No," Morrison replied bluntly. "It's effective. The gas they introduced wasn't lethal. It didn't need to be. It was a powerful irritant that Darkari physiology couldn't tolerate." Within minutes, the bunker became uninhabitable. Warriors stumbled from the tunnel, desperate for clean air. The commanders had no choice but to evacuate. They emerged into the pre-dawn darkness, surrounded by their best guards, planning to reach secondary positions. They made it 50 meters. Morrison and Santos had positioned themselves on opposite ridges, creating overlapping fields of fire. The crossfire was devastating. 9 shots, 9 kills. The entire Darkari command structure eliminated in less than 30 seconds. The surviving warriors fled in panic. Within hours, word spread throughout the insurgency. Their leaders were gone. The humans had done the impossible. In the extraction shuttle racing back to orbit, the crew sat in stunned silence. Wisp, the medic, finally spoke. 40 targets. You killed them all. That was the mission, Santos said simply, cleaning her rifle. But how? Thas demanded. The distances, the security, the terrain. It should have been impossible. Morrison looked up from his equipment. You asked for snipers. We gave you snipers. What you didn't understand is that human snipers aren't just marksmen. We're hunters. We're psychologists. We're ghosts. We don't just kill the body. We kill the will to fight. The Darkari are already sending negotiators, Vellani reported from the pilot's seat. Complete surrender. They're terrified. Good, Morrison said. Fear is a powerful tool when properly applied. As they docked with Zenith Station, crowds had gathered. Word of their success had spread throughout the fleet. Officers who had mocked the humans now watched in awed silence as Morrison and Santos walked through the corridors. Admiral Voss met them in the briefing room, her tentacles writhing with mixed emotions. 40 confirmed kills in 21 days. No friendly casualties. Minimal collateral damage. The insurgency ended with precision rather than devastation. It's remarkable. It's what we do, Santos said. But at what cost? Commander ZYX Theta asked. You turned warfare into assassination. Where's the honor in killing from the shadows? Morrison set down his rifle case and faced the commander. With respect, Commander, honor is something you talk about in victory speeches. Our job was to end a war with minimal casualties. Would you rather we had called in orbital bombardments? Sent in ground troops to die by the thousands? How many lives did we save by ending this quickly? The room fell silent. The math was undeniable. A conventional campaign would have cost thousands of Imperial lives and devastated the planet. The humans had ended it with 40 bullets. The Empire wants to expand our contract, Voss announced. They want more human sniper teams integrated into our forces. That's Earth's decision, Morrison said. We're just soldiers. As they returned to their quarters, Santos noticed something different in how the aliens looked at them. The curiosity was gone, replaced by something between respect and fear. They're afraid of us now, she observed. Good, Morrison replied. They should be. We just showed them that humans don't need massive fleets or energy weapons to be dangerous. We just need patience, intelligence, and the will to do what others won't. That night, as Morrison cleaned his rifle for the final time before departure, he thought about the images from the tactical feeds. 40 lives ended. 40 shots that changed the galaxy's perception of humanity. It hadn't been glorious. It hadn't been honorable by their standards. But it had been devastatingly effective. And in war, that's what mattered. The Empire had wanted to see what human snipers could do. Now they knew. The question was whether they would be able to live with that knowledge. Because once you invited death into your house, you could never be quite sure when it might decide to visit again. The shuttle carrying them back to Earth departed the next morning. In the command center, officers watched it disappear into hyperspace. The betting pools had been settled, with those who had believed in the humans collecting substantial winnings. But nobody was celebrating. They were all thinking the same thing. If 2 humans could do this, what could 20 do? Or 200? Or 2,000? The Galactic Empire had gained powerful new allies. But they had also glimpsed something that made them deeply uncomfortable. Humans didn't just participate in war. They had elevated it to an art form. And artists, as everyone knew, were always looking for new canvases. The massive space station rotated slowly against the backdrop of distant stars. Inside its gleaming corridors, representatives from dozens of alien species moved with purpose. Today was special. For the first time in galactic history, humans were being officially welcomed into the Galactic Empire's military forces. Commander Zoyax Theta adjusted his forearms nervously. As a Krellian warrior, he had seen many battles across the galaxy. His purple scales had been scarred in conflicts on 100 worlds. But meeting humans? This was new territory. The reports about these strange bipedal creatures from Earth were contradictory at best. Some said they were weak. Others whispered darker stories. The docking bay doors opened with a hiss. Through the airlock stepped 2 figures in dark tactical gear. They moved differently from any species Zoyax Theta had encountered. Not with the heavy steps of Gorvax or the gliding motion of Etherians. These humans walked with a controlled, predatory grace that made his warrior instincts twitch. "Welcome to Zenith Station," Zoyax Theta said, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into English. "I am Commander Zoyax Theta of the 3rd Battle Fleet. You must be the human specialist we requested." The taller human removed his helmet, revealing a weathered face with sharp gray eyes. "Master Sergeant Jake Morrison, Earth Defense Corps." He gestured to his companion, a woman with dark skin and calculating eyes. "This is Sergeant First Class Maria Santos. We're your sniper team." Zoyax Theta's aide, a small Yavani with bright blue fur, chittered excitedly. "Only 2? We expected at least a full squad." The request was for your best long-range combat specialists to help with the Darkari uprising on Kepler 442b. Morrison's face remained neutral. "You asked for the best. You got us." The commander's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of amusement. "Confidence. I like that, though I wonder if it's justified. Come, let me show you to your quarters. Tomorrow, you'll meet the rest of the strike force." As they walked through the station, aliens of all descriptions stopped to stare. Word had already spread about the humans' arrival. Some species looked curious, others skeptical. A group of Thornax warriors each standing 3 meters tall with natural armor plating, laughed openly as the humans passed. "Look at them," one Thornax rumbled. "So small, so soft. What could they possibly contribute to a real fight?" Santos paused, turning her head slightly toward the group. Morrison touched her shoulder lightly, and she continued walking. But ZYX Theta noticed the exchange. There was something in the way they communicated without words that spoke of long partnership and deadly efficiency. Their quarters were standard military issue, designed to accommodate various species. Morrison set down his equipment case and began checking his rifle, a long black weapon that looked primitive compared to the plasma cannons favored by most galactic forces. "I must ask," ZYX Theta said, watching with interest. "That weapon fires solid projectiles, yes? Why not use energy weapons like civilized species?" Morrison looked up from his rifle. "Energy weapons are fine. They're clean, efficient, easy to track and counter. But sometimes you want something that doesn't light up every sensor in a 10-kilometer radius. Sometimes you want something that doesn't care about shields tuned to stop plasma. Sometimes you want something that just works." The commander's translator struggled with Morrison's tone. Was it humor? Threat? Simple fact? ZYX Theta couldn't tell, and that bothered him more than he cared to admit. That evening, the station's officers gathered in the tactical briefing room. The holographic display showed Kepler 442b, a world of dense jungles and towering mountain ranges. Red dots indicated Darkari positions, the rebellious insectoid species that had rejected imperial rule and slaughtered 3 diplomatic missions. "The Darkari have proven impossible to dislodge," Admiral Voss explained, her tentacles gesturing at the display. "They know the terrain perfectly. Our bombardments are ineffective in the jungle canopy. Ground assaults result in massive casualties. They strike from hidden positions and disappear before we can respond." "What about their leadership?" Santos asked, studying the tactical data with intense focus. "Decentralized," Voss replied. "Each hive cluster operates independently. We've identified approximately 40 high-value targets among their command structure, but reaching them is impossible. They're protected by kilometers of hostile territory and thousands of warriors." Morrison stood, walking around the hologram. "Show me the thermal imaging from your last reconnaissance." The display shifted, showing heat signatures in various colors. Morrison studied it for several minutes, occasionally asking Santos to zoom in on specific areas. The other officers watched with barely concealed impatience. What could these humans see that their advanced sensors hadn't detected? "There," Morrison finally said, pointing to what looked like empty jungle. "And there, your Darkari commanders. They're using the underground river systems to move between hive clusters. The temperature differential is masking their signatures, but you can see the pattern if you know what to look for." A Malosi intelligence officer scoffed, her feathers ruffling. "Impossible. We've run every algorithm, every scan. There's nothing there but vegetation and water." Santos pulled out a small tablet, her fingers flying over the surface. "Your algorithms are looking for what you expect to find. Humans have been hiding from each other since we learned to walk upright. We know all the tricks." She projected her analysis onto the main screen. "See these micro-variations in temperature? That's not water flow. That's body heat being dispersed through clever ventilation. And these patterns in the vegetation? That's not natural growth. That's camouflage cultivation." The room fell silent. Admiral Voss leaned forward, her large eyes focusing on the data. "By the 7 suns, you're right. How do we miss this?" "Because you're used to fighting civilized wars," Morrison said bluntly. "Energy weapons, shield generators, clear battle lines. The Darkari aren't playing by those rules. Neither will we." Commander ZYX Theta felt his scales shift uncomfortably. There was something unsettling about how quickly the humans had analyzed what the Empire's best minds had missed. "So you can identify targets. Can you eliminate them?" Morrison and Santos exchanged a look. "Give us a week," Morrison said. "We'll need detailed intelligence, weather patterns, and a small support team for extraction. No more than 4 personnel. A week. The Thornax general who'd been silent until now slammed his massive fist on the table. To accomplish what? Kill 1 or 2 commanders. We need victories, not pinpricks. How many commanders would convince the Darkari to negotiate? Santos asked calmly. All of them, Voss admitted. Without their leadership structure, the hive clusters would have no choice but to accept terms. Then, we'll need 10 days, Morrison said. Maybe 12. The room erupted in laughter. Even ZYX Theta couldn't hide his amusement. You're saying you 2 humans will eliminate 40 heavily protected targets in less than 2 weeks? Targets we haven't been able to touch in 6 months of fighting. Morrison began packing up his rifle. You asked for snipers. That's what we do. If you don't believe we can deliver, send us home. But if you want this rebellion ended with minimal casualties, give us what we need and stay out of our way. The laughter died. Admiral Voss studied the humans carefully. You're serious. Deadly serious, Santos replied. Though I should warn you, once we start, you might not like what you see. Human warfare isn't pretty. It isn't honorable by your standards. But it's effective. Over the next 3 days, Morrison and Santos worked with an intensity that unnerved their alien hosts. They studied every piece of intelligence, every satellite image, every intercepted communication. They requisitioned equipment that seemed bizarre to the Imperial quartermasters. Chemical compounds that weren't weapons. Fabric that wasn't armor. Electronics that served no apparent purpose. They also spent hours at the station's shooting range, calibrating their weapons. The range officer, a veteran Krellian like ZYX Theta, was initially dismissive. The plasma targets were set at standard combat distances, 500 meters maximum. Move them back, Morrison said after his first shot. That's already extreme range for precision fire, the officer protested. Move them back. They kept moving them until the targets were barely visible to most species' vision. Morrison and Santos hit them consistently. Then, they started adding complications. Wind simulation. Atmospheric distortion. Moving targets. Multiple targets. The humans adapted to each challenge with mechanical precision. Word spread through the station. Officers and enlisted personnel found excuses to visit the range. They watched in growing disbelief as the humans performed shots that should have been impossible. Santos demonstrated something she called calculating for Coriolis effect, adjusting for planetary rotation on extreme distance shots. Morrison showed how to read wind patterns by watching vegetation movement kilometers away. But it was their philosophy that truly disturbed the watchers. During a break, a young Yavani officer asked Morrison about the ethics of killing from such distances. Isn't it cowardly? The officer asked. To kill without giving your enemy a chance to fight back. Morrison cleaned his rifle scope methodically. War isn't about being fair. It's about completing the mission and bringing your people home. The enemy doesn't get a vote in how they die. They already voted when they chose to be the enemy. But surely there's honor in facing your opponent directly? Santos looked up from her ammunition calculations. Honor is a luxury for species who haven't spent their entire evolution as both predator and prey. Humans learned early that the survivor isn't the strongest or the bravest. It's the smartest, the one who strikes from darkness and disappears, the one who turns the enemy's strength into weakness. Commander ZYX Theta, who'd been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. You speak as if war is merely mathematics and biology. What about courage? What about the warrior spirit? Morrison stood, shouldering his rifle. Courage is doing what needs to be done despite the fear. Spirit is continuing when everything in you wants to quit. But neither of those means being stupid. Dead heroes don't win wars. Live soldiers do. As the day of deployment approached, the station's atmosphere grew tense. The command staff was split between those who believed the humans might actually succeed and those who expected spectacular failure. Bets were placed in the lower decks, with odds heavily against the humans. The night before departure, ZYX Theta found Morrison on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The humans seemed different in the starlight. Smaller, more vulnerable. Tell me, OIX Theta said, joining him at the viewport. Why did Earth send only 2 of you? Surely more soldiers would guarantee success. Morrison was quiet for a moment. You ever heard of the law of diminishing returns? In our kind of warfare, more people means more chances for detection, more logistics, more variables. Santos and I have worked together for 8 years. We know each other's thoughts, movements, capabilities. We're not 2 soldiers. We're a single weapon with 2 components. And your superiors trust you to represent humanity's capabilities? They trust us to complete the mission. If we fail, you'll never work with humans again. If we succeed, Morrison turned to look at the commander. Let's just say Earth is very interested in proving our worth to the Galactic Empire. ZWX Theta's scales rippled. And you're confident you can do what you claim? Eliminate all 40 targets. Commander, I've been doing this since I was 18. I fought in wars you've never heard of, in places that don't officially exist. I made shots in conditions that would make your computers cry. Santos is even better than me. So yes, I'm confident. Then, why warn us we might not like what we see? Morrison's expression hardened. Because you think war is about grand battles and heroic charges. You're about to learn what humans figured out long ago. War is about making the other side stop fighting by any means necessary. And we're very, very good at the any means necessary part. The next morning, the deployment began. Morrison and Santos loaded their equipment onto a small stealth shuttle, assisted by the 4-person extraction team Voss had assigned. The team consisted of a pilot, a medic, and 2 security personnel, all volunteers who'd been warned about the unusual nature of the mission. As they prepared to depart, Admiral Voss made one last attempt to convince them to take additional support. At least accept a squad of our special forces. For protection, if nothing else. Santos sealed her equipment case. With respect, Admiral, your special forces would just get in our way. We work best alone. But surely, Admiral, Morrison interrupted. You hired snipers. Let us work. In 2 weeks, your Darkari problem will be solved. You have our word. The shuttle launched, leaving behind a station full of skeptics and believers. In the command center, officers gathered around the tactical displays, watching the small craft disappear into hyperspace. 10 credits says they're dead within 3 days, a Thornax officer muttered. 20 says they never even land, another replied. Commander ZWX Theta remained silent, remembering Morrison's eyes. He'd seen those eyes before in the greatest warriors of his own species. But there was something else there, something that made him grateful the humans were on their side. For now, as the shuttle entered hyperspace, Santos checked her rifle one last time. Think they're ready for this? Morrison smiled grimly. No, but they're about to get an education in why humans are the apex predators of Earth, and why that makes us very, very dangerous in space. The stars stretched into lines around them as they headed for Kepler, 442b, and a demonstration of warfare that would shake the Galactic Empire's understanding of humans forever. The real shock wasn't going to be their success. It was going to be how they achieved it. Because the galaxy was about to learn that humans didn't just adapt to warfare. They perfected it. And perfection in human hands was terrifying to behold.